everyone. Happy Monday. Happy Father's Day for yesterday. I hope it was a really wonderful weekend for you. Lovely to see you here in the garage in the Court of Public Opinion. We're live streaming on Friday, but it's Facebook, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and the audio from our Facebook posting is our podcast. So it's a new one every day, except for Friday, and that's when we go live streaming with your phone calls as well. Royal Adelaide Show is well and truly on for another year. That's good. You know, per head of population, per capita, it's the most successful agricultural show in Australia. We should be proud of it. I'm sure we are. More industrial action by teachers this week. I see the Teachers Union in force, wearing yes T-shirts, yes blazoned on their T-shirts in the nightly news and wherever else they can appear. In my day, schools were places of learning. How quaint. And teachers were educated and wise. Anyone wearing a yes T-shirt or waving a yes placard, in my humble opinion, is certainly not wise and not educated, but more to come. Happy 30th birthday to the Man Sheds. Now, the Man Sheds, a great initiative. They started out here in little old South Australia, the town of Gawler, 30 years ago. And they're now in just about every country in the world. Very important for men's health and for the community as well. They do a lot of good. Men's Sheds, or the Man Sheds. I'll come back to it later, but John Farnham has licensed the Yes campaign to use his hit song, You're the Voice. The thing that surprised me, I suppose, was nobody asked him how much he was being paid, or if he was being paid. I thought that would have been germane, but lots to talk about, ladies and gentlemen. Sally Sara, ABC journalist on the weekend, talking about The Voice. I couldn't believe my ears. She said of the interviewee, "What does the yes vote have to do to win the referendum?" No pretense of impartiality or objectivity. What does the yes vote have to do to win? Again, I say this is not reporting, it is campaigning. And for my money, the ABC is a disgrace on this particular subject, but the others we can get around to in the fullness of time. To talk about this yes vote as a unifying moment is ridiculous. Sort of the line they're pushing. It will divide the country on the basis of the colour of one's skin, which is racism, pure and simple. John Farnham hopes that his song will do for Indigenous people what it did for him. The lovely sentiment, John, but you haven't identified the right problem. Now, the song, from his point of view, it helped him out of what is popularly called a show business slump. Okay. The difference is John Farnham made a change to his life. He found the song. He sang the song. He recorded the song. He promoted the song. He toured the country. He worked bloody hard. That's what turned his life around. Aboriginal people have every advantage that can be provided. Dollar for dollar, they are the most provided for, privileged community in the entire country. And I can go through the maths with you if you like. That money, however, does not reach the people for whom it is intended. That is the real scandal. But this government does not want too much of a focus on that. It's a no-brainer. There are hundreds of Indigenous organisations charged with the responsibility of distributing the money and the opportunities. The bureaucracy has gotten bigger, and so too has the suffering of the people. The Voice is nothing more than another bureaucracy. All the others haven't worked. Why would this one work when the same bureaucrats are involved? No, ladies and gentlemen, Indigenous people don't need a voice. They need a forensic accountant and probably a royal commission into what must be either rampant corruption or complete incompetence, sanctioned by governments, government after government after government. I think what we'll do, because Peter's collected some very interesting stuff that we can put on our posting here on Facebook and the podcast. We might keep it for the live streaming show on Friday as well, jeremycordeaux.com, which is on, by the way, 24 hours a day with all sorts of bits and pieces that we've now sort of collected. What have you got first up, Pete? John Howard?
John Howard, 3 reasons why he's voting no.
John Howard, yeah. 3 reasons why he, best Prime Minister we've had in my memory, he is a man of substance. Some even called him a man of steel. However, he has 3 good reasons he'd like to put to you as to why he is going to vote no. And we should all hear that. We can maybe run that after the dates?
Yes.
Yeah, we will. Okay. And we'll run another one tomorrow. Now, that is Mundine. Anthony or Tony Mundine, the great footballer who later became a champion boxer.
Yes.
He has some really interesting things to say. Embarrassing for the government, I might say, or potentially so. What else is around? Jimmy Buffett has died. Jimmy, did you like Pete?
Oh, I love Jimmy Buffett, yeah.
Jimmy Buffett, he was 76. Famous for his sort of, I don't know how you describe it, tropical, calypso sort of country style of music. He started out as a busker, and he ended up as a very successful musician, entertainer, and entrepreneur. He turned his hit song, Margaritaville, into a brand. Very clever marketing. He opened restaurants and resorts and even retirement villages, all branded with the Margaritaville success. I don't quite know if you're running a restaurant, how the line, wasting away in Margaritaville. Pete, wasting away in Margaritaville, it kind of fits in. Or, indeed, if you're in a Margaritaville retirement village, wasting away, I don't know.
But he's a genuine character.
Oh, he's a genuine character, absolutely. A great workaholic. But if you listen to the song, the words, it's about a bloke sitting on his veranda, singing with his guitar, lamenting his wasted life. Which in his case was far from wasted. No, he had a great life, great successful life. I think he died a billionaire anyway. Another African state, this time Gabon. This is the 8th country in Central and Northwest Africa to have had a coup in the last 2 years. I mean, you might say they're the most democratic countries in the world because everybody gets to go at being president. It's bizarre, though. But the people suffer. The political instability of Africa can't just be described as a coincidence. country after country after country after country, stable and prosperous under the colonialists. You know, the French, the Germans were there, the English, the Portuguese, the Spanish. It's funny, isn't it? The nasty colonialists leave, and the chaos, the corruption, and the coups begin. I mean, think Rwanda. You know, but you know, you can think Nigeria and the Biafran War, and oh my God, it's never ending. Ethiopia. God, look at a map of Africa. Well, you can't have a map of Africa because it's changing by the day almost. Anyway, funnily enough, the coups never stop. I'm assuming that the people got rid of the colonialists and got what they wanted, which was independence, whatever that ultimately means for them. Certainly doesn't mean a peaceful, quiet, prosperous life. Workplace reform legislation introduced in Parliament today, a section of which says that wage theft will attract a penalty of 10 years in the slammer. 10 years in the slammer, plus heavy fines and all the rest of it. I really doubt that there are too many bosses. Very hard to get good staff, you know. I doubt that there are too many bosses who would go around knowingly stealing from their employees. Is that such a problem that you'd introduce legislation to protect people from it? I mean, yes, there's been the odd case, that 7-Eleven scandal, yes. Whether that was omission or commission, I don't know. There wouldn't be a section in that piece of legislation that protects the employee from the bullying and interference of the trade unions, would there? Maybe. No. I wouldn't have thought so. No. No, not with that government there. The government wants unions to conduct snap inspections of the books. Now, for non-union members, it's frankly none of the union's business what deal they're on. You know? My understanding of it is you can belong to a trade union or not, it's your choice. Unless, of course, you're bullied into it. The award system is too complex. Now, that would be something that these people could better apply their energy to simplifying rather than complicating. What attracts people to the gig economy or to be a contractor? I think it's the freedom of choice, the flexibility. The boss, he is attracted because there are no on-costs. You know, the endless, sick leave, annual holidays, with the holiday loading, superannuation.
Maternity? Yeah,
maternity leave, paternity leave, paid. You know, the boss has got to pay you to go home and have your babies. Oh, it's an amazing thing. Anyway, all the disincentives there that I just named, they're disincentives to employ people. 25% of the costs of employment are these on-costs. All the employer organisations say that this bill is bad, it's not thought through, it will lead to fewer jobs and higher prices. Well, I think that's probably right. But the trade union movement have their boys in power and they will have their way. Yes, John Howard coming up in a second, but let me say happy birthday to you, or happy wedding anniversary. It is September 4. 4 days into spring. I love it. 1884, Britain ends its policy of penal transportation to New South Wales, Australia. September 4, 1884. No more prison ships, no more convicts. 1901, the great William Lyons, Sir William Lyons, later British industrialist, automobile manufacturer, Jaguar Cars, was born in Blackpool. He died in 1985, but born in 1901. Same day, Henry Ford, 1917, Henry Ford II, American automotive industry businessman, grandson of Henry Ford and son of Edsel Ford, born in Detroit, Michigan, died in 1987. Same day, 1957, the Ford Motor Company introduces, the Ford Motor Company introduces the Edsel automobile range. This didn't fare too well. 1888, George Eastman patents the first roll film camera and registers the brand name Kodak. Lewis Howard Latimer, American inventor. He was the fellow who invented the carbon filament light bulb. Born in Chelsea, Massachusetts. He died in 1928, but born this day in 1948. Steve Irwin, the Australian naturalist, TV personality, crocodile hunter, attacked and killed by a stingray at the age of 44 on this day in 2006. Google is formally incorporated by Larry Page and Sergey Brin, two students at Stanford University, on this day in 1998. That's an incredibly short time ago, Pete.
Yeah.
Lots happened.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the amazing thing is you can just sort of say, hey, Google, Google can do just about everything. Australian Jack Brabham, later Sir Jack Brabham, he clinches the third Formula One World Drivers' Championship with a sixth place in the Italian Grand Prix in Monza in 1966. English author Beatrix Potter first writes the story of Peter Rabbit for a 5-year-old boy, this day, 1893. Singer Harry Nilsson makes a rare and final concert appearance, joining Ringo and his all-star band for a version of Without You at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, Nevada, on this day in 1992. The FBI announces that it has recovered a pair of Dorothy's ruby slippers from The Wizard of Oz, stolen 13 years earlier, 2018. They stay on the case. That's good. Dick York, the American actor, Bewitched, born in Fort Wayne in Indiana. He died in 92. He was born in 1928 on this day. The first airplane to succeed or exceed 300 miles per hour. That's 483 kilometers an hour. J.R. Wendell from Glenview, 1933. Just a couple more. 1882, in its first large-scale test, Thomas Edison's light bulb is used to light New York's Pearl Street Station on this day in 1882. And 2010, Canterbury earthquake of 7.1 magnitude, which struck the island of New Zealand at 4:35 a.m., causing widespread damage and power outages. 2010. I remember that. I remember that day. Now listen, settle back and have a little listen to this. This is John Howard, and three of really, I think he could come up with probably more reasons than just three, but three of the reasons why he will be voting no to this referendum question. Thank you for viewing. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. Pete and I will be back tomorrow. Believe in yourself, and goodbye for now.
All right, let's speak about The Voice, Mr. Howard. We're on the eve of the referendum for the voice to Parliament. Anthony Albanese will tomorrow announce the date. What's your message to Australians at the start of this campaign?
Well, the campaign's been going for a while, but my message is if you are intending to vote no, hold hard to that intention. don't be blinded by an avalanche of publicity. There's a lot of talk that the ES case has millions of dollars. Well, I think Clive Palmer spent tens of millions of dollars with very little result. Australians are very hard-headed when it comes to politics. We have what I've always recognised as a deep deposit of Celtic scepticism when we look at the blandishments of political figures of whatever stripe. I think the case for voting yes is very weak. And what I find quite extraordinary is that the Prime Minister and his colleagues are sort of almost boasting about the fact that they haven't explained it. I'm against the Voice proposal for three reasons. The first is that I don't like anything that divides us according to race, and however you slice and dice it, it does do that. It does create a body that will be inevitably composed of Indigenous people, and the electorate for that body will be composed of Indigenous Australians. We
don't know how they'll be elected, though.
Big pardon?
We don't know how they'll be chosen, that body.
We don't know how they're going to be elected. Yes. And I've often thought of a speech I heard Bob Hawke make in 1988 when he said, the only thing that defined you as an Australian was your commitment to Australia. No matter where you came from, whether you were Anglo-Celtic, you were Italian, Greek, Christian, Jewish, atheist, whatever, didn't matter. You were defined by your commitment to Australia, and that's how it should be. Yet this proposal defies that, defies the declaration of the person I regard as the most successful Labor, and I stress the adjective, Prime Minister that Australia's had. Now that's the first reason I object to it. The second reason I object to it is that I fear that in the hands of an activist High Court, and bear in mind that only 3 years ago the High Court of Australia decided that an Indigenous person could never be categorised as an alien, even though that person was born in another country, owed allegiance to another country, and in every other respect was an alien. That worries me. It ought to worry other people who fear for an activist court. And I think the final reason is that whatever the government might say in the next 6 weeks, the truth is that any pronouncement of this body will have a coercive effect on the government of the day. And if this body proposes something that the government doesn't like, every man and his dog, to use an Australianism, will be yelling at the government to do what they're told, because this, after all, is the body which represents Indigenous people. And you've gone through all this trouble to insert it in the Constitution, and now you're going to ignore their advice. How can you possibly do that? And that is how politics can work in this country.
We've seen debate over whether the Uluru Statement from the Heart is 1 page or 18 to 26 pages. Anthony Albanese says the suggestion that it's more than 1 page is a conspiracy. We've seen ABC journalist Lee Sales give advice to the ABC that it would be misinformation for anyone to say it's more than 1 page. My colleague Peter Credlin was censored for her view that it runs to 26 pages. What do you think about all of this?
Well, I think that just illustrates the extraordinary muddle that the government's got itself into. I mean, there are countless instances of the Prime Minister saying that he's in favour of having a voice, a treaty, and truth-telling. Now that's the essence of the Uluru Statement from the Heart. And I don't think there'll be too much talk about 1 page versus 26 pages if the voice gets up. There'll be plenty of people who are saying the next thing is a treaty. Now, I think of all the absurdities coming out of this debate, there is nothing more absurd than the notion of making a treaty with the Indigenous. How can you make a treaty with yourself? Treaties are made between sovereign nations. We have treaties with other countries. We don't have treaties with bits of ourselves. And it only has to be stated to be realised as a complete absurdity.
We're seeing a lot of corporates and sporting codes come out and back the voice to Parliament, some of them running strong campaigns. Qantas has painted yes on the side of some of its planes. What's your view of this?
Well, I think the Qantas example is probably the most egregious of all. My view is that large companies should be neutral because they have a lot of employees, they have a lot of shareholders, they have a lot of customers, and there's no way they can speak for them. And I did make some personal representations for the leaders of two of the sporting bodies that I'm close to. And
oh, did you? Yeah.
I just simply said, why don't you just stay neutral? Yes. And they said, oh, well, I think their governing bodies wanted to take a position, but how on earth can a large sporting... Take a body like the AFL, which is the largest football code by far in Australia. Although not necessarily player-wise, but certainly spectator-wise. They've taken a position. Does that mean that every single club is going to advocate a yes vote? I know for a fact they won't. Because I've spoken to people who are involved in the running of the individual clubs who quite resent the fact that they're there's an attempt being made to dragoon them into supporting it. I just think, as a lover of various sports, I just think it'd be a good idea if it's left to the individual. There's no way that a body like the AFL can know what their fans want. There's no way Cricket Australia can know what their fans want, or the NRL or Rugby Australia, and I just think it'd be better if they said nothing.
Do you think there's a risk that it would have the opposite effect and
I think a lot of
people would feel bullied into vote?
Australians do not like being bullied. They do not like receiving condescending advice. We have this, as I said, this scepticism, what are they up to? What do they want? That's the sort of reaction that you get, and I don't think that's going to help, but help the yes case. I hope it doesn't.
Do you still think it's on track to fail, the referendum?
Well, I can only take the advice of, I can only note what the polls are saying, and the polls are trending. But I've seen a lot of polls, and I think what's happened is it started off with a big lead.
Yes.
And as questions have arisen, that lead's whittled away. And but I would, as somebody who wants it to be defeated and defeated resoundingly in every state, I would encourage no voters to maintain the rage, if I can draw on a phrase that's well known in Australian politics.
We spoke a moment ago about Peter Credlin's Sky News video on Facebook being censored, labelled false and misinformation for her comments about the length of the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which at the very least are contested, at the very least. Are you concerned there's too much censorship of free speech, both in this debate, but also the Albanese government is pushing ahead with proposed misinformation legislation?
Well, I think the idea of any government proposing a misinformation bill is absurd. I just think we should say there are three things that maintain democracy in this country, in my view, and if you've got them in a robust state, you don't need anything else. The first thing is that we have a very robust parliamentary system. Got a lot of faults and it cops a lot of criticism, but it's very effective. And secondly, we have an incorruptible judiciary. Nobody says our judges are crook. I mean, we disagree with some of their decisions, and that's our right. But gee, they've got a reputation for integrity.
Yes.
And the final thing is we have a free press. I mean, we criticise it, and it can be very uncomfortable. I was made very uncomfortable by the free press on many occasions when I was Prime Minister, but that's their job. If you've got those three things, you don't need anything. You don't need a Bill of Rights. You don't need governments saying, well, we're going to define what's disinformation and misinformation.
Now, the Foreign Minister Penny Wong criticised you in private remarks last week at a Labor factional dinner.
In private remarks?
Private remarks that were leaked to the Sydney Morning Herald.
Oh.
Are you aware of this? She referred to your remarks in the early 1990s during the seminal land rights case, Mabo. She said that, when you held up a map of Australia on the 7:30 report, Wong said that your arguments were exaggerated then, and then she said that fears about Mabo, the apology, and the same-sex marriage haven't been realised, and she's saying the same would be the case for the voice to Parliament. Do you think you've been on the wrong side of history before?
No, I don't think I've been on the wrong side of history. I remember that it was in relation to some land claims that have been made, and I was referring to the fact that there were claims. I don't think there's anything particularly odd about that. And I voted no to same-sex marriage, and I don't apologise for that. Why should I? So it was a very imperfect plebiscite because the Labor Party wouldn't support an orthodox one, wouldn't have altered the result. And as far as the apology is concerned, well, I had a reason for not giving the apology. I don't think you can apologise for the misdeeds of other people. You can regret that they happened, and I did that. But if I think apologies should be given by people who are responsible for the things they're apologising for. And I was being asked to apologise for the misdeeds of others, and I wasn't willing to do that. And a lot of people agreed with me, a lot didn't. Does that put me on the wrong side of history? Well, I'll leave it to the historians, and the Australian people didn't think that because they re-elected my government several times after I had declined to give the apology.
Anthony Albanese said in an interview with Neil Mitchell that he hadn't read the full Uluru Statement from the Heart. At the same time, it was one of the commitments he made the night he won the election to implement the Uluru Statement from the Heart in full. Do you think there is a concern that he's not across the detail and that, specifically he hasn't read this?
Well, I think the cavalier approach he took in that interview, and he said, I haven't read that, why would I? Well, I think if you want to change the Constitution and you're the Prime Minister, you should read every damn bit of paper about it that you can possibly absorb in the time available. Mr Albanese is not respecting the Australian people by explaining exactly what is involved, and it's not good enough for him in answer to a question to say, why would I read 26 pages? You've got to learn. You've got to read a lot more than 26 pages to be a successful Prime Minister.
John Howard, an honour to speak with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.